The recording surfaced at 11:47 p.m. on a Sunday night. 47 minutes of Donald Trump speaking with a foreign leader. No diplomatic niceties. No carefully parsed language. No State Department officials sanitizing every word. Just two men speaking with brutal candor about deals, threats, and the raw mechanics of international power. By midnight, intelligence agencies were in crisis mode. By 2 a.m., the White House was coordinating an emergency response. By sunrise, every news organization in the world was analyzing every sentence, every pause, every inflection of what would become the most explosive diplomatic leak in modern history. The question that would dominate the next 72 hours wasn't just what Trump said. It was who recorded it, who leaked it, and whether what was said on that call constituted a threat to national security or simply the unvarnished truth of how international politics actually works. Now, we're about to explore a story that exposed the gap between public diplomacy and private deal-making, and nearly triggered an international crisis in the process. The context. The call took place 6 months into Trump's presidency. He'd spent those months systematically disrupting traditional diplomatic protocols. He spoke directly with foreign leaders without extensive State Department preparation. He made policy announcements via social media. He conducted international relations like business negotiations, transactional, direct, and often shocking to career diplomats. The foreign leader on the other end of this particular call led a strategically important nation. Not an enemy, but not quite an ally either. A regional power with significant economic leverage and complex relationships with both America and its adversaries. The kind of nation where relationships are carefully managed through years of diplomatic groundwork. Trump had other ideas about how to manage the relationship. The call was scheduled as a routine diplomatic check-in. 30 minutes allocated. Standard topics: trade, security cooperation, regional stability. The kind of conversation that normally produces bland official readouts and accomplishes little beyond maintaining appearances. But nothing about Trump's approach to foreign policy was standard. The contents. The leaked recording revealed a conversation that bore no resemblance to traditional diplomacy. In the first 10 minutes, Trump dispensed with pleasantries and went straight to business. He wanted concessions on trade terms. Specific numbers, specific timelines. He laid out what he expected and what he was willing to offer in return. The foreign leader tried to redirect toward broader strategic discussions. Trump pulled the conversation back to concrete deliverables. "I don't care about the big picture," Trump said at one point. "I care about results. Can you deliver or not?" The bluntness was shocking to anyone familiar with diplomatic norms. But it got worse. Around minute 15, Trump began discussing other nations in the region with stunning frankness. He called one allied leader weak and unreliable. He described another nation's government as incompetent but useful. He revealed private conversations he'd had with other world leaders, including specific details that those leaders certainly assumed would remain confidential. The foreign leader on the call seemed alternately amused and alarmed by Trump's candor. At several points, you could hear him trying to steer the conversation toward safer topics. Trump ignored these attempts. Then came the segment that would dominate headlines and spark the most serious concerns. Starting around minute 27, Trump began discussing classified intelligence. Not in technical detail, but in ways that revealed sources and methods. He referenced specific intercepts of communications from a hostile nation. He mentioned covert operations that hadn't been publicly acknowledged. He used this classified information as leverage, essentially saying, "We know what you're doing, so don't try to play games with us." Intelligence professionals who later reviewed the recording would describe this segment as catastrophically reckless, potentially compromising ongoing operations and revealing capabilities that adversaries shouldn't know America possessed. But Trump wasn't finished. In the final 15 minutes, the conversation turned to personal matters. Trump discussed his political opponents, his frustrations with the media, his view of the deep state working against him. He asked the foreign leader for help in ways that crossed clear ethical lines, requesting that the leader make public statements favorable to Trump's domestic political agenda. The foreign leader handled this carefully, neither agreeing nor refusing, simply acknowledging Trump's requests without commitment. But the fact that Trump made such requests at all, mixing personal political interests with official diplomatic communication, raised immediate questions about abuse of power. The immediate aftermath. When the recording went public, the reaction was instantaneous and explosive. The intelligence community erupted in alarm. The CIA, NSA, and other agencies immediately launched damage assessments to determine what capabilities had been compromised and what operations might need to be terminated or modified. Early estimates suggested dozens of intelligence sources might be at risk. The State Department went into crisis management mode. Career diplomats who'd spent decades building relationships had to contact foreign counterparts and attempt damage control. The message: this isn't how we normally operate. This doesn't represent American diplomatic principles. But that message rang hollow. Trump was the president. His voice on that call represented America, whether career diplomats liked it or not. Congressional leaders from both parties demanded immediate briefings. Democrats called for investigations into potential security breaches and abuse of power. Republicans, initially silent, began carefully crafted statements expressing concern, while avoiding direct criticism of Trump. Foreign governments reacted with a mixture of shock, schadenfreude, and concern. Allied nations wondered what Trump might have said about them in other private conversations. Adversarial nations gleefully highlighted the recording as evidence of American chaos and unreliability. The foreign leader who'd been on the call maintained diplomatic silence, neither confirming nor denying the recording's authenticity. The source investigation. Behind the scenes, multiple investigations launched simultaneously to determine how the recording was made and who leaked it. The call itself had been conducted on a secure line with standard protocols for presidential communications. That meant multiple people had access to recordings or transcripts. National Security Council staff, White House communications personnel, translators, and various intelligence analysts who routinely review such calls. The recording quality suggested it came from an official source, not some amateur spy operation. This was a professional recording from within the system itself, which meant the leak came from inside the administration or the intelligence community. Trump's team immediately blamed the deep state career officials who opposed Trump and were sabotaging his presidency from within. They pointed to previous leaks and suggested a coordinated campaign to undermine the president. Intelligence officials countered that leaks only happen when people witness conduct they consider dangerous or illegal. If administration officials were so concerned about leaks, perhaps they should focus on preventing behavior that motivates people to leak rather than hunting whistleblowers. The FBI launched a criminal investigation into unauthorized disclosure of classified information. Polygraph tests were administered to anyone with access to the recording. Phone records and computer logs were analyzed. The investigation became yet another source of tension between Trump and the intelligence agencies. The authenticity debate. Trump's initial response was to question whether the recording was even real. Fake news, he tweeted within hours of the leak. Another fabricated hit job by my enemies. The so-called recording is either completely made up or heavily edited to make me look bad. Witch hunt continues. His legal team suggested the recording might be a sophisticated deepfake, artificially generated using voice synthesis technology. They pointed to slight audio artifacts that could indicate manipulation. They demanded independent verification before any conclusions were drawn. But intelligence agencies that analyzed the recording found it authentic. The audio signatures matched Trump's voice patterns. The background details matched the known circumstances of the call. The foreign leader's voice was consistent with previous verified recordings. Every technical analysis pointed to the same conclusion: the recording was real. Former intelligence officials speaking anonymously to media outlets confirmed they'd heard similar things from Trump in classified briefings. The content and style matched his known communication patterns perfectly. One former NSC official told reporters, "Anyone who's been in a room with Trump discussing foreign policy would immediately recognize this as authentic. This is exactly how he talks when cameras aren't present." The legal questions. Constitutional scholars and legal experts debated whether Trump's statements constituted criminal conduct. The unauthorized disclosure of classified information was clearly illegal, but that crime was committed by whoever leaked the recording, not by Trump himself. As president, Trump had broad authority to declassify information, even if doing so recklessly compromised intelligence operations. The request for personal political favors from a foreign leader raised more complex questions. Was this an abuse of power? Did it constitute a quid pro quo that violated campaign finance laws or other statutes? The legal analysis was complicated and divided along predictable partisan lines. Some argued that Trump's conduct was impeachable even if not technically criminal. Others insisted that presidential communications with foreign leaders were inherently political and that attempting to criminalize diplomatic conversations would cripple future presidents. The debate raged in Congress, in legal journals, and across every media platform. But the political reality was clear. Without overwhelming bipartisan support, no legal consequences would follow. The diplomatic fallout. The international consequences were immediate and serious. Several allied nations quietly suspended intelligence sharing with the United States, concerned that sensitive information might be carelessly disclosed in future presidential conversations. This had real operational impact, reducing America's ability to track terrorists, monitor adversaries, and respond to emerging threats. The foreign leader who'd been on the call faced domestic political pressure. Opposition parties in his country demanded he explain what deals he'd made with Trump. The government released a carefully worded statement claiming the leaked recording was taken out of context and did not represent the full nature of bilateral discussions. Behind the scenes, that government privately communicated with the State Department that future high-level calls would require more formal structure and multiple witnesses. The message was clear. Trust had been damaged, and normal diplomatic relations couldn't continue under previous assumptions. Other world leaders became more cautious in their communications with Trump. Conversations became more formal, more scripted, more carefully documented. The free-flowing discussions that Trump preferred, and that sometimes produced breakthroughs, became rarer as foreign governments protected themselves against future leaks and embarrassments. Trump's counterattack. After 48 hours of criticism, Trump went on offense. In a primetime address, he reframed the controversy entirely. He admitted the recording was authentic but insisted he'd done nothing wrong. In fact, he argued, the call demonstrated exactly the kind of strong leadership America needed. I speak plainly with world leaders because that's how you get things done, he said. The diplomatic establishment wants me to use fancy words and accomplish nothing. I use direct language and deliver results. That's what the American people elected me to do. He attacked the leak itself as treasonous and a direct assault on the presidency. He called for criminal prosecution of whoever released the recording, arguing that protecting presidential communications was essential to national security. And he pivoted to his political opponents, suggesting they were weaponizing leaks to undermine his agenda because they couldn't defeat him at the ballot box. The strategy was classic Trump. Acknowledge the facts, reframe them as strengths rather than weaknesses, attack his critics, and change the subject to more favorable terrain. The lasting impact. 3 weeks after the leak, new controversies had pushed the story out of the headlines. The investigation into the leak's source continued but produced no public results. Congressional hearings were held but divided along partisan lines. And Trump continued conducting foreign policy in his characteristic style, only now with fewer witnesses and more careful controls on recordings. The recording had revealed something that Trump's critics already believed and his supporters dismissed. That Trump conducted international relations with a transactional directness that violated diplomatic norms and potentially compromised national interests. But it also revealed something else, that in the modern era, nothing stays secret. Even conversations on secure lines between world leaders can end up on the internet within hours. The implications of that reality extended far beyond Trump himself. Years later, intelligence officials would cite the leaked call as a turning point in presidential communications. Future presidents became far more cautious about what they said in any recorded conversation. The era of frank, unguarded dialogue between leaders, for better or worse, had effectively ended. The phone call that leaked lasted 47 minutes. But its effects on American diplomacy, intelligence operations, and the presidency itself would echo for years. It demonstrated that in an age of digital surveillance and motivated leakers, even the most secure conversations are vulnerable to exposure. And it raised a question that remains unresolved. Is it better to have leaders who speak candidly and risk embarrassing leaks, or leaders who say nothing of substance but maintain perfect message discipline? The answer may depend on whether you value honesty or competence, directness or judgment, results or process. Trump offered one version of leadership. The leaked call showed exactly what that version looked like without filters, without handlers, without the performance of diplomacy. Whether that was refreshing honesty or dangerous recklessness remains a matter of fierce debate, one that will likely continue long after the recording itself fades from public memory.